Dr. Narendra Tiwari, and he was an Ayurvedic doctor, and he had a special interest in Soma. And Soma is a mysterious mythological plant that was the basis of the Soma Cult, the ancient Soma Cult of India. And there are similarities between the Soma Cult of India and the Kaikion of the Eleusinian Mysteries of ancient Greece. And both of these represent the use of entheogenic plants in a very large social gathering for centuries and centuries that was all structured. It was like the main religion. The Soma cult was actually a primary religion, and the Eleusinian Mysteries was a primary religion for almost 1,000 years. And there are a lot of historians that believe that it was all based on this kind of very controlled initiation into the use of this visionary plant. Now, Dr. Tiwari was very interested in finding out what Soma was. Everybody has been ever since because nobody knows. It became extinct. Well, that was one theory, is that it became extinct, that it was over-harvested. But he had a really beautiful explanation. What he said, what I think it is, I think that Soma became invisible and that only people of spiritual purity can see it now. So he had a pretty mystical relationship to that particular plant. And he told me a lot of potential species that it might be. And he told me about all of these plants that behave very unusually, that could be Soma. And he said, well, there's an entire class of herbs that you can't find them unless they want you to find them. And if you go looking for them, they won't be there. But if they want you to take them, they'll become visible. So we have all of these kind of mystical things that are very much part of Ayurveda and the Vedas, and that's because it's very closely linked to Tantra, which is very magical. And then Tantra and the Vedas all come, well, the Vedas specifically come from Soma originally. You know, the earliest Veda, the earliest written Vedic manuscript is actually the Rig Veda. And in the Rig Veda, the earliest part of the Rig Veda is the Soma Mandala, a collection of 100-something hymns, chants, songs to Soma. And that's the earliest scriptural religious writings in the world. That's something I find really intriguing, that the earliest religious writings were actually songs to an entheogenic plant. So yes, all of these things are woven in, but they're just kind of woven in differently than certainly, you know, the South American, the Amazonian and the shamanic traditions. But there's a lot of very old roots of shamanism that are woven into Tantra in India, for sure. The word Soma has so many different levels of meaning. You know, Soma means this plant, this extinct or mysterious unknown species of plant that was the basis of a cult that has a lot of evidence was an entheogen. I mean, the experience that people were describing was that they were drinking this and becoming immortal. And that was actually information that got out from that region. The Soma cult actually became famous in the old world because people were hearing about these people becoming immortal. And they were writing these scriptures about it. I mean, that's what the Soma Mandala of the Rig Veda says. I have drunk the Soma and entered the light. You know, I have entered the realm of the gods and have become immortal. I mean, they were writing things like that. And so, of course, people were interested. And there's some very plausible historical links between the rumors about the Soma cult getting out and the Taoist alchemists in China getting really interested in finding Soma. And so actually the Soma Cult of India stimulated a whole bunch of self-experimentation trying to find Soma in China. And one of the things that came out of that was something like reishi mushroom, the mushroom of immortality, which doesn't have the same psychoactive effects, but it's a mushroom of longevity. Now, that's just one level of the word soma. Now, there's another level of soma, which is used in Ayurveda, which crosses over into Tantra. And that's where the Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism practices also can refer to soma. And this is a kind of a multidimensional meaning. So in Ayurveda, there are two celestial bodies, two primary celestial bodies that control everything in the biosphere of the earth and our physiology, and it is manifest in our body, and that is sun and moon. Okay, and so our body is designed in the image of sun and moon, which is the biorhythms of the daily cycle, the diurnal cycle of the sun, and then the monthly cycle of the moon. But this is also manifest in our autonomic nervous system because solar is, the sympathetic activation, the heat of metabolism, whereas parasympathetic is lunar, cool. All right. And so Ayurveda developed this polarity to a very high degree. And it's an example of medical cosmology. It's basically how Ayurveda as a medical system was based in a cosmological vision. And so Agni is the sun, Soma is the moon. And so Agni and Soma were part of celestial mythologies. Agni was all the different forms of the fire gods and goddesses, the fire in the hearth and the cooking fire and the fire in nature and lightning. And Agni became the digestive fire and the fire of our metabolism. So in other words, Ayurveda started to incorporate these cosmological, mythological ideas into medicine. And the same thing with Soma. Soma was the moon, and the moon was what governed water. And of course, we know that the moon has a gravitational effect on the ocean, but the moon has a special relationship to plants also. And therefore, we start to see that the term soma as moonlight has a special relationship to plants. And plants in general are said to contain soma. And this concept of moonlight and plants and soma is very much linked to deep meditation and to altered states of consciousness, specifically either the entheogenic experience or deep states of meditation. And so therefore, we find that soma also is very closely related to Amrit, to nectar, and Amrit and nectar are all closely related to deep states of meditation. And so therefore, the term soma, which this Lama may have been referring to, is the practice of the activation of the inner soma. All right. So there's an outer soma in the plants, and then there's the celestial soma in the moon, and then there's the juice in the plants that's related to nourishing, specifically our fluids. And the most refined fluid that is related to soma is our cerebrospinal fluid. And so therefore, there's also this definition of soma as the inner liquid, the inner essence. Okay. And so when we look at soma at that tantric level, what we find is that it's related to the secretions of brain chemistry in deep meditation, basically, and that it has a lot to do with the links to the Kundalini and raising the attention and the focus, releasing from the lower chakras and entering into the brain, basically, and the cerebrospinal fluid. So soma also means that. it's multidimensional. And so without knowing what he was saying specifically, I would say he was talking about the inner soma. Well, they say that there are many kinds of somas in the plant world. And the commonality is that they're all a kind of nectar that influences our consciousness. And so the entheogens are considered a kind of soma, or more specifically, they're considered a kind of stimulant to our own soma. Okay. But other plants have other kinds of somas, like, for example, rose oil. Rose oil is a real classic example of what Ayurveda would say would be a soma in the flower world. Okay. And then there are soma nourishing kinds of plants that are very closely related to building the ojas. That's an Ayurvedic concept, the core immunity. That's the nutritional essence. Nutritional essence is liquid. Okay. And nutritional essence is very closely related to the fluid of the nervous system, the cerebral spinal fluid. And so these branches of medicine are all closely related. Rasayana, rasa, the juice, that is that which rejuvenates us, Rasayana, rejuvenation therapy, is very closely related to nourishing our inner soma. And then there are these plants that are rich in soma. And then there are these plants that stimulate soma in different ways. And so the visionary plants would be those that awaken the lower activity of the soma to a higher level of soma. So it's a huge subject, beautiful topic. Thanks for opening that up.